What's up, jet ski fans? Welcome to another Joel Arsenault YouTube video. In this one, we are going to be building this tool and attempting to bore out my Kawasaki 1100 triple cylinders. In the last video, we had a catastrophic engine failure, as you may be able to see from some of these parts. In this video, I'm going to be using some confusing terminology. Part of that reason is because I am in fact not a machinist and struggling just to get by. And well, part of that reason is because this is a boring bar. This is also a boring bar. This is a boring bar that goes into a boring head, and when it's fully assembled is called a boring bar. And this is also a boring bar. More accurately, these pieces would be called a mandrel, I believe. So the main shaft of this would be called a mandrel. The part that is attached to the mandrel would be called a tool holder, and the part that actually goes through the tool holder and through the mandrel is one of these, which is called a boring bar. It is Canada Day long weekend here in Canada, and July 4th is quickly approaching for those of you in the States, and so I am quite rushed to get this video out to you guys so that you will have something to watch, hopefully on your time off. I also wanted to get this video out really quickly because some of you were way more upset about my engine blowing up than I was, and I wanted to give you guys something to make you feel a little bit better about it. Yes, the X2 will live again. I just ordered almost $1,000 worth of parts to rebuild my crankshaft, as well as some parts and pieces for the crash engine, so you can look forward to that. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up now. Let's get into the video. I have decided to make a tool holder and a custom boring bar. I'm going to use this piece of a truck drive shaft, or I'm going to attempt to use this piece of a truck drive shaft to make a boring bar. This is going to be a boring bar tool holder, and I'm going to try to bore out my 1100 cylinders. I have tried this once in the past and it was a little bit less than successful. This is the boring bar that I made last time. I don't have the head on it, but basically I held this in my 4-jaw chuck and used that with my cylinder strapped to an L bracket, or attached to an L bracket. The bracket is in here. And then I spun the tool and moved the cylinder head and cut the bore. The problem was that there was way too much flex in my lathe because it is a fairly small spindle and it is a fairly large cut. You're cutting at a minimum of 80 millimeters because that is the standard bore size. So what I'm going to do differently this time, I ordered a live center, which means a piece that goes in here and allows the lathe to support this bar on the end by putting a little piece in the end here. Anyway, we'll see that in the future. I used the lathe to scribe a couple of lines across this, and that's going to allow me to grab it in the vise and then basically punch my hole through for the tool. The scribed line on the part gives me a fairly accurate way to grab it in the vise and know that I'm grabbing it perpendicular. Is that the... yeah. I'm grabbing it 90 degrees from where I want to drill my hole. I don't know if I've pointed this out yet, but all of this working depends on me being able to actually drill a hole through this. I tried drilling the shaft and it was instant failure. It is way too hard to drill with a high-speed steel drill bit. So I think I might have one single shallow 3/8 carbide end mill. Oh yeah, I do. Wow, okay. Project saved. Maybe. What are you doing up there? That's what I have to deal with when I'm trying to make stuff. Hey, you got up there. You got up there by yourself. Yeah, you did. What? What? Fine. Fine. What? The next thing I'm going to do is get this set up to drill the holes that will actually hold the boring bar in place, or hold the adjustment. The boring bar will go in here from this side like this. And I'm obviously going to have to cut some off of this, but I'm going to have to put some screws down through here. I'll probably put one here and one here to hold this in place. As I was saying before the GoPro battery went dead and shut off, I did a whole bunch of work to this. I cut a slot in it. I have some bolts in there, pinch bolts, so that they will pinch down on the shaft. I've also got both bolts in place that will tighten down onto the tool. This is what I would call the tool holder, and it is going to go onto this boring bar. I sanded down the boring bar and marked the location of where it is going to need to be. So now what I need to do is cut a hole through the boring bar so that the tool goes all the way through. And yeah, this is going to be quite tricky because this is an axle out of a truck, which is very hard material. I've tried to drill holes in it and it wouldn't drill. I tried to cut it with my bandsaw and almost destroyed the blade. And so yeah, very hard stuff. I'm going to use a carbide end mill to try to poke a hole down through there and hope that that works. So I used the back of the 3/8 end mill to line up the hole perfectly, tightened up and aligned the vise, and so now the shaft is perfectly aligned with the hole in the aluminum, and that's where I want the hole in the shaft. So now what I'm going to try to do is remove this piece, the tool holder, and punch a hole in there, and hopefully it works. Okay, that is the biggest part of the battle done. Because now that I have a hole through, the other end mills will punch through. After a whole lot of driving and just a little bit of sleeping, we managed to make it back to Calgary, Alberta. We drove through to Winnemucca, Nevada, and then through to Washington to visit the Jet Ski Brothers. It is rainy and miserable, but I am in the garage. I'm going to be working in here on the 1100. I got my live center. Why was that hard to say? So I can get my lathe set up and try to do some boring on the cylinder and hope that it works. Oh, I'm just realizing something. I can't check the bore without removing the cylinder. Huh. That is a serious problem. My lathe uses a MT3 taper, so that's this part here that goes into the end of the tailstock. This is a cute little live center that will support the end of the work. Goes in like this. Oh wow, it's not even enough room to go in there. Okay, I'm gonna have to remove, there's a stop bolt that stops the, what do you call this? Tailstock from sliding all the way off. And I actually need to remove that. This is gonna be in here like this. I will tighten this part down and then tighten the quill in a little bit. Then I can do my turning, basically run the tool through and do my cutting. And then, once I'm finished doing my cutting, I need to measure to see how much I've actually cut. Well, in order to do that, I've got these tools here. This is a snap gauge. So this goes inside of the bore, like this. And you tighten up the end of it, you rock it back and forth, and this gets set to the size of the bore. Then you use this tool to measure what the bore actually is. This tool will tell you what the bore is. The problem is, you guys may be able to see already, is that I have this boring bar going through the center of my bore. And so in order to check to see what the bore is, I actually need to remove it from the boring bar. So that is going to be a problem because this doesn't actually go far enough. So I need to release this and move the cylinder far enough that I can actually get a snap gauge in there and check it. I'm not going to go over in detail how I've set this up and how I'm going to use it. I will show you guys using it in a little while. But for now, I thought I would give a brief explanation of how this is set up and how I plan on using it, or how I hope the tool actually works. So I've got the boring bar set up in the chuck. Before I actually set up the boring bar, I made sure that the center of the bore of the cylinder was lined up with the center of the axis of the chuck. So the exact middle of the chuck is lined up with the exact middle of the cylinder. I used a coaxial dial indicator to do that. I'm not going to show you guys how that works, but it's this fancy dial indicator here. So I've got the cylinder set up exactly where I want it, mounted to this angle plate, and I've got the boring bar set up in the chuck. I've checked the run out of it, yeah, that works, with this dial indicator close to where the tool is going to be, and it has about 2 thousandths run out. The run out here doesn't really matter because it's a single point cutter. It could be 40 thousandths run out and it wouldn't matter because the tool will follow the run out. If you don't understand what that means, well, I apologize, but I'm not going to go into any more detail or it will take forever. So now that I have the boring bar all tightened down, I will bring the cylinder all the way over until it touches the chuck. There is a nut here touching the chuck. And then I have the tool holder that I made. This is going to slide onto the boring bar. And then I will line up the hole. There is a hole for the tool to go through. And I need to line that hole up and actually drop the tool in and get the tool in the right direction. There we go. That is lined up and in. Now that it is in, I can slide the cylinder, hopefully, all the way across so that I give myself a little bit more room to work with. Now you can see the tool is on the other side of the cylinder, and what I'm going to do is use an Allen key to tighten down the pinch bolts. The pinch bolts make sure that the tool holder is actually engaged with the shaft so that it won't rotate or spin. The tool itself is going through the shaft, so it couldn't spin very far, but we don't want it to spin at all. So we will do this, and that way it won't go anywhere. Now we can move the tool back and forth. It is a little bit stiff, but we can move the tool back and forth to do our adjustments for our cutting depth. And now what we need to do is basically move the cylinder over, make it so that the tool just barely is going to touch off on the cylinder. There we go. And now I can tighten up the pinch bolts that hold the tool in place. There's one here and one here. That worked so well. I don't know what the bore is, but I put a new cutting tool in here, and wow, that worked so good. Okay, let's see, can I... All right, I am going to loosen off the tailstock, loosen off this, and then I'm going to try to very carefully pull this towards myself and back the tool out so that I don't damage the tool and so that I don't scratch the cylinder. The finish on this is wow. If this is not oversized, this is going to be so perfect. I'm worried that I might have gone too big, but let's get the measuring tool in there and we'll see. All right, get the live center out of here so I got some more room. Oh man, if this is, oh man. Okay, let's re-zero this out. This is kind of a moment of truth, folks. So that is zeroed out. Let's see what our bore is. 8128. Oh man. 8128, and we are golden. I'm gonna recheck this. $81.28 on here, and the bore is perfect. No marks whatsoever. The bore is 81.28 and the piston is 81.86. Oh man, okay. Calm down, Joel, don't screw this up. I need to do some very, very, very careful calculations now. I may have just done what will be my final pass. I need to do a little bit of measuring and find out. But yeah, if my calculations were correct and the cutter cut the way I expected it to, then I should be done. right, it fits in there. I am going to leave well enough alone because the finish on there is almost perfect. I do not want to mess anything up, so I'm going to use the hone to do the rest of the work. The last few times I did my own boring jobs, the outcomes were fairly sketchy, and I was depending on a good hone to actually bring the cylinder out to where it should be. This time around, I have all of the cylinders so that the pistons will fit in. They probably won't fit in through the top, but I have all the cylinders so that the pistons will fit in. As you can see, that basically has no clearance, but the piston will fit in. That fits in there. That fits in there. Again, basically no clearance. This one has about 3/1000 clearance, so I need a little bit more boring in there. And all of the bores turned out true and straight, and there are no crazy chatter marks. This one I almost ruined by trying to change my technique for the finishing pass. And yeah, I was able to get all of the marks out. I don't know how well the camera will pick this up, probably not at all. But I was able to get all of the marks out, the chatter marks out on the upper side of the exhaust port, which is where it really matters. There are a few chatter marks left on the very bottom. I don't know if they will clean up or not, but right at the very bottom here. And that won't affect the performance whatsoever. And they might disappear once I run the hone through them. So I am going to run the hone through them off camera and get the final fitment done. And then we are going to get this engine back together and hopefully have a successful test out on the water. I think next time I come out, I'm not even going to bother putting on a wetsuit until after I test it. I've got the hose hooked up to it. I'm going to go turn the water on in just a second, and then we'll fire it up and see if it behaves any better with this CDI and different stator.